Okay, there's 6 cups total and a little cup for white highlights at the end. I put the 2 blacks a little separated by themselves just so I know exactly where the gray starts. You don't have to, you know, it's just a habit I formed. But the first cup is Dimension Black, the second cup is Sculpting Black, third cup is Dark Tone, fourth cup is Medium Tone, fifth cup is Light Tone, and the sixth cup is Miracle Water, that you can get through Intense. It doesn't come in my set, so you can get that separately. If you find yourself without Miracle Water, you can use distilled water. You know, it works really similar. So the Dimension Black I use usually just for the blackest blacks in the tattoo. And then the Sculpting Black, I'll start using Sculpting Black before I start with the gray tones. If it's a really black area that's going to blend into a gray tone, that's where I start with the Sculpting Black, and then from there I move into the grays. So sometimes with the Dimension Black, if it's an area where I'm going to blend from a real black into gray tones, I may start with the Dimension Black, wisp it out and soften it up, and then I come in with the Sculpting Black over that and kind of bring the Sculpting Black off the Dimension Black, and then from there I go into the light tones, so on and so on. Alright, I'm about to start this Boris Karloff as Frankenstein's monster piece. A lot of people call him Frankenstein, but he's actually Dr. Frankenstein's creation, so he's Frankenstein's monster. His name isn't Frankenstein. Anyway, that's not important. So we're going to do this Boris Karloff portrait from Frankenstein, the movie Frankenstein, classic, one of my favorites. Came out in 1931, some useless trivia for you horror fans. Okay, since I'm left-handed, I'm going to start on the left side, just out of habit. I'm going to start from the bottom, because I try to work from the bottom, wipe away from the stencil, so I don't wipe the stencil off as I'm working. If I started on top and I'm wiping, the stencil would wipe off pretty quick and I'd be screwed. So something Tom Renshaw taught me when I started doing portraits. So I'm going to start from the bottom on the left side. I'm going to start working on his coat here. So I'm going to jump in with my dark gray tone. And of my grays, the dark gray is pretty dark. If you packed it in, it could almost be black. So the way I work, I do a lot more brushing than packing it in with circular motions. So I start right in, just kind of brushing it in. And then you can kind of ease it in and see how dark it's going to look without going in too dark right off the bat. But the gray tone, it's a really rich, dark gray, but it is really dark. So the way I put it in, I'm kind of finessing it in. I'm not packing it in real hard, which is really the way I do 90% of my tattoos. The only time I'm doing a circular oval hand motion is when I'm packing black. But all the gray stuff, I'm really brushing either back and forth, or I'm just, I call it a backstroke, where I'm just kind of one stroke at a time brushing it in. Now this area I'm working on, it's almost black, so I'm actually going to dip into my Sculpting Black. And I'm going to dip into the Sculpting Black and the dark tone equally at the same time. So I'm kind of getting somewhere in between those two. And that's one thing about the set is half the time you're dipping into 2 cups at the same time. You can't just dip into 1 cup and then go, okay, I'm going into the next value of gray, just move on to the next cup. there's those in-between values, like in between the dark and medium. I'm going to dip into both those cups at the same time if I'm easing in from a dark to a medium. That way you get a totally smooth transition. You know, if I just went from dark, then medium, you could almost see it in the skin where you went from dark to medium. So it's really important to always dip into 2 cups at the same time as you're going between values. But a lot of times I know which value I'm going for. I know what it looks like, so I just jump into the medium tone. I'm doing an area that calls for the medium tone. So there's really no, I don't have a completely set method. I don't work from dark to light. I just kind of work from the bottom up in whatever tone it calls for. I finish an area. Sometimes I'm working light first and then the dark area. Sometimes I'm working dark and then light. There's no set method. Every tattoo is different. I'm dipping straight into the sculpting black now to hit the edge of this collar, which is black. But it's not as black as some other areas in the tattoo, so I'm saving that for the dimension black for those really black areas. So now I'm using just my dark tone.
Andre, you bringing your Karen or what?
What needle grouping are you using, Bob?
I'm using a 7 mag. I use a number 10 gauge. It's a bug pin type needle. So I put a 7 mag in a 5 mag tube. And I do the whole tattoo like this, I'll do the whole thing like that. Because I can get into tight little areas with it. I'll do 98% of the tattoo with this one needle. I can get into tight areas, and I can also do big areas and nice smooth shading throughout. So it's a really, really versatile needle. I started with 7 mags when I started, and just stayed with them and got used to them. So this is dark tone still. It looks almost black, but it heals into a nice, real dark gray. And then I'm going to kind of blend it out. Still just dimension black, sort of just soften it up and just wisp it out a little bit. Dimension black to define the edge of this collar. Now I'm going to go into a straight medium gray, the medium tone, and then fill in most of this collar here. And kind of brush it in, and then I'll go over it a few times. When you work this way, you're not damaging the skin because you're kind of finessing it in, and you're not overworking the skin too quickly, and so you have room to build it up, and then you can kind of see how dark. It's good. It's a good way to build up to the dark value you want without putting it in too quickly and then realize you went too dark. So I can kind of watch it. The more you go over it, it gets a little bit darker. So that's about the tone I'm going to want right there, and that's just straight up medium gray. And this whole collar, this whole area here, I'll probably do it with a straight up medium gray because it's all just one darker gray tone. So this is the left collar area here. A little bit of a collar in his shoulder. It's just his shoulder of his the coat that he's wearing, which is it's a pretty dark gray, but I'm using a medium tone, which is it's fairly dark. So I think it'll be dark enough to. Sometimes in the tattoo, I may if something looks really dark, I may lighten it up a little bit for the sake of the tattoo, without changing the actual photo. But sometimes you can just sort of beef up contrast and stuff in your head, just because it maybe the lighting in the picture could have been a little better or something. Okay, so I'm having a problem with my stencil wiping off. I didn't have any rubbing alcohol. I always use rubbing alcohol to clean the skin real thoroughly. Because sometimes if people's skin is a little oily, or maybe somebody used hand lotion or something on their skin, and you have to really clean that area thoroughly. Because hand sanitizer works pretty good. It's almost like rubbing alcohol when you're cleaning the area. But for some reason, it could be her skin, because I've had people where no matter what I use to put the stencil on, it just doesn't stay. So that's what we got going on here today. So I'm going to approach it a little different than I normally do, and it's happened quite a bit. It's not a new thing. So I'm gonna, as my stencil starts to wipe away, I kind of go in there and I rough in areas with a light wash, lighter than it's going to be in the end usually, just to map out some of those stenciled areas before it wipes away. And then I go back into it later and work on it. Sometimes I'll do a little bit of gray lining in some of the dark areas, like the lips are real black, so I actually gray line the lip here. The bottom of the chin, I did they're gray lines, but they're like a medium wash probably, because I got like almost black going up against that line, so that'll disappear when it's done. The goal is to not see any lines when the tattoo is done. So I'll be throughout the tattoo. I'm going to be gray lining as I go, as the stencil's wiping away and stuff. It's not the ink, as you'll see in a minute. It's just it's probably that hand sanitizer with aloe, I'm guessing, or it's her skin, or a combination of both. So I'm going to see there's a little spot in the coat here that's almost gone. I'm going to rough that in, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to do this shirt. There's a lot of black in here, so really quickly I'm going to rough this part in, and then I'm going to continue working around the bottom there. You can see I kind of roughed in some areas in the face. It was real light. A lot of my stencil is little dotted lines mapping out some of the softer values. So I kind of mapped in enough here so I know what's going on before the stencil disappeared. It's already gone down there. So. So now I got a couple little folds in his coat down here. It's real dark area, but I'm roughing in where the fold is with a real light wash, because it's almost wiped off already. So just doing that. That's it right there. Now I'm going to come in. The light source is hitting from the left side. So this side of the shirt is darker. Like on the left side, the edge of the coat's darker and the shirt's lighter. On the other side, it's more in a shadow, so the shirt's actually darker, and then the edge of the coat's lighter. So I'm going to come in with Dimension Black now, and do the inside of the shirt there, in the darkest area of the shirt. I also want to show you this is the darkest black that would smear the most, and I just want to show you that it's not the ink that's wiping the stencil off, because the ink's wiping right off. See, the ink wipes right off. There's no smearing. So that's not what's causing the stencil to come off. And this, it probably happens to me twice a month, if not more. So I'm just packing Dimension Black in here. This is like a shadow on the dark side of his face. It's really dramatic lighting in this picture, which is awesome. I love high contrast. That's one thing about these old black and white horror movies from the 20s, 30s, and 40s. This stuff was shot with a super dramatic light source purposely. They were shot in black and white, and this kind of stuff just jumps out at you from across the room. Like this tattoo, from across the room you'll see it, and you'll probably see what it is, as opposed to like maybe somebody's baby portrait that you got the picture that somebody took with their digital camera, or their smartphone or whatever, and it's just the light source is hitting straight on. Those are the least fun tattoos to do because there's just no contrast, So these old black and white horror things are some of my favorite tattoos to do. You can see that black just wipes right away, wipes right off, no problem. It's like Pelican in the way that it's real clean. It's not messy. It wipes right off. Problem I had is just I had to wipe more, which wiped the stencil off quicker. So not a big deal. I just have to approach it a little different than I normally would. And I haven't seen any other ink this clean. Besides the Pelican I used to use. Now I'm blending a little Dimension Black, about half and half with my sculpting black. I'm kind of dipping equally in both cups because I'm blending the Dimension Black into it's going to go from Dimension Black into sculpting black into the dark gray, into the medium gray by the time I get to the other side. So it's a gradual dark to light area of this shirt. Okay, I got the left side of the shirt and his coat done over there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this side of his coat, that's the dark side of the portrait. So it's pretty much Dimension Black, my darkest black. So I'm going to start up here and just come down. I'm going to finish this whole area, and then we'll get up into the face, up into the head. So this is pure Dimension Black I'm going to do right now. Like packing tribal. Gotta work around this little neck bolt. Okay, I got the coat done. Pretty much got the whole bottom part done, his clothing. I'm going to start coming up into the face now. I'm going to do a little bit of gray lining and then start roughing in some of the values in the face, and then just sort of work my way up the face. So right now, just a little bit of gray lining. Normally when I want to gray line super light lines, just for reference there, I'll do a quick dip in my light tone and then I'll run it in my water cup. So it's almost all water, just a touch of gray to leave a little bit of line there and then when I shade that area and finish off the area I'm gray lining. I'll shade right up into those lines so they'll pretty much disappear, you know, by the end of the tattoo. Right now I'm gonna gray line around the eyes. This one side of the eye, it's so dark. I'm just dipping into my medium tone just to leave a little bit of a darker line because it's really black shading up to that line. So this is just for my reference as I'm doing the tattoo. Okay, I'm going to start working on this darker side of the face. Lots of blacks in here, lots of dark grays. I'm going to start roughing in some of my values I have in the stencil a little lighter than they're going to be when it's finished. Just rough it in real quick and then and start working that area. I just use just my light wash, dip it into that, and roughed in all my. I have some real light stencil that was light anyway in the stencil, so I didn't want that to wipe away at all. So I just kind of went in there and roughed in any little areas of stencil. And now I'm going to come in here with actual black and start doing the darkest side of the face, the fun stuff. So I'm excited. So I'm going to come straight in. I'm going to use sculpting black instead of dimension. It looks like the hair up here is a little bit darker than the actual shading, even in the dark shadow areas of the face. So I'm going to use sculpting black here and save the dimension black for the black up in the hair, which is the same underneath the chin and the shirt and stuff. So here we go. So now that I got this dark side, the bottom part of the face roughed in, I'm going over it with a lot of touch of sculpting black, a lot of the dark tone, and quite a bit of the medium tone. And getting a lot of that dark stuff shaded in. I'm using a little bit of light wash too, but I haven't. I'm kind of getting the darkest stuff in this little chunk right now. So I've been kind of bouncing around between those three: sculpting black, dark tone, and medium tone for this whole area. So I'm starting on the hair now on the left side, so I'm using just dimension black, and I'm just starting to kind of rough in the hair. So that's what's going on now. Hair is a tricky thing to do. I do it all with a 7 mag. I usually don't use a liner when I'm doing hair, unless sometimes at the very end of when I'm finishing up the hair, I may go back and grab a liner. But actually, I take that back, you know. I do it all at the mag. But hair, Hair's the hardest thing to talk about, but when I'm doing hair, I've been pretty much sculpting it out with the mag instead of using a liner. And you know, you're kind of shading chunks of hair. With this picture, it's so graphic that the hair is almost all black, but there is some there'll be some softer strands in the highlighted area of the head. But his hair is pretty black, so it's more black than anything else. But hair in general, though, it's a lot. I'm really just sculpting out chunks of hair as opposed to a zillion individual strands. And then sometimes at the end, and then he has it too, like around the sides of the head, you see a couple little loose strands here and there. I'll use one needle off the corner of my mag, and I'll go in, and sometimes with a medium tone instead of a black. And then just sort of cut in a couple little hairs here and there. If I see it a little bit in the picture, I'll just do a little bit of it in tattoo. It gives it an overall realistic effect. But hair, I think, is one of the hardest things to do for me, doing a portrait. It always is, still is. Honestly, her skin's a little on the tougher side. I hate to say that. Don't hate me. I think I just got, over the weekend I had 3 people with really good skin in a row. Like, I got lucky, you know. So sometimes when it happens, and I mean, she has nice skin, but it's a little, there's 10 different types of skin, you know, to get those soft grays in. I realize, you know, usually like it all comes out the same in the end, pretty much, you know. Some tattoos just go really quick. It just goes in like butter, you know. And then some you gotta work at it a little bit more. But in the end, they always come out just fine. You know. Now I'm going to finish up the forehead, and I'll be using majority of the forehead's really light, the majority of it. So I'll be using mostly the light tone and the light tone with water. Coming off the dark side of the forehead, I'm going to be blending black into dark tone, to medium tone, to light tone, and try to get a nice smooth blend. So the forehead has a bit of all the tones in it. I got to get the right angle. I'm doing some wrinkles in the forehead with my mag, so I gotta turn it a certain way. I can only do it from an angle like this. This is all light tone mixed with water. Doing some real light wrinkles. I want them to be real subtle when they heal, so try to go in really light. We're doing this thing pretty small, so I can't try to get every little wrinkle in there, so I really just try to get the gist of it. Where it looks like you got them all, but there's no way you could, unless you did the thing really big, you know. So when I do a portrait this size and there's a ton of detail, I try to get some of the main stuff and get the majority of the wrinkles, and looking at it, it kind of looks like you got it all, even though you kind of simplify it a bit. I'm trying to finish up all these little tiny wrinkles I'm doing, and then I'm just trying to do some real light wash in there, so it's got to have some kind of value in there, even though it's super light. So it makes it look more realistic and three-dimensional. And I want to kind of have to get value in the majority of the forehead, but you also want to keep that keep it real light so you keep that contrast that's in the picture. So it's pretty tricky to do. Alright, now I just gotta do some background. With the background, I just want to I want to highlight like the top of the head. I want to just do background that comes right up to the top of the head, and that creates that top edge where that highlight's hitting. As it gets darker, the background is going to go from probably a medium gray, into the light tone, and just kind of fade off, and just do a little bit over here. I might do a little bit of light wash over here just to balance it out, even though I don't really need it over there. In the back, I'm just going to do enough to need a dark background against the ear and the bolt on this side. This side's real light, so it needs a dark background. This side doesn't need any background really, but I'm going to get this background in the back just a little bit and around the top and see how it looks from there. I may not do anything over here. So this will all just be done with all 3 washes, I think. In fact, I'm going to start with the dark wash. And work around this bolt in the bottom of the ear. Okay, now I'm going to dip in the dark wash and the medium wash at the same time and start to lighten up this background as I come out farther. I'm dipping straight into the medium wash and lighten up even more. Trying to get a gradual blend and get lighter. Trying to get a gradual blend and get lighter as I fade out farther. And just now I'm dipping into the light wash. And as I get closer to his jacket, I want a real light wash so it's lighter than his jacket. But around the ear and the bolt, I wanted it to be darker to make the ear and the bolt pop out. So I'm kind of playing with the background from dark to light. Okay, I'm going to jump up to the top of the head here. I'm going to come in with a medium wash. Medium wash and light wash mix. Now just straight light wash. Light wash and water. I'm doing some real light strands of hair up in the highlighted area, the flat top of his head. There's you can see some real light wisps of hair going across there. So I'm just getting a few of those in there, just so it's not completely bare. Alright, I'm going to do a little bit of white. This piece doesn't really call for much white, so it's just going to be in the metal in his head. The bolts and the bolt on his forehead, and just a touch in one of his eye sockets. Can you stand up? Call that done. So with this piece, I started like I always do with a portrait, from the bottom. I'm left-handed, so sometimes I tend to start on the left side. It doesn't matter. So I started with his coat, got that chunk of coat done, came over, did his shirt, worked underneath his chin, and then I came over and did this whole this side of his coat on the right side. So I got the whole. I framed in the whole bottom part underneath his head, you know, his shoulders and his shirt. And then I started with the chin, and I kind of worked my way up. I kind of just roughed in some of the grays. The stencil was really light, so I kind of just roughed everything in, and you know, up to about the nose. And then I started working this whole section here, and then just kind of worked my way up. And you know, I was using every ink that I have. You know, I started off with some sculpting black in here, and I used like a medium tone in the jacket part here. I used a little dimension black in this little black crevice here, and then when I did the shirt, I pretty much used a medium black for that, with some sculpting black around the darker edge. Up in here, like, darker side of the face is over here, so under his chin it was just solid black, so I used dimension black in the blackest part, blended that out, and then blended sculpting black from there, and then I blended the sculpting black into a dark tone into the medium tone, and I started on this side. And then over here I started with dimension black up at the top, because it's as black as can be. And then I faded that into a sculpting black, into the dark tone, and then into a medium gray, the medium tone in this area. There's a little sculpting black in this area, and this is all medium tone and light tone. As I got up into the face, this is, it's got some of everything. The whole tattoo has a bit of both blacks and, you know, all three tones, and then the light tone mixed with water to get the super soft stuff. So I did a dark tone in this little dark area, and then I used a medium and light tone to get all these different tones in here, and a mixture of dark tone, medium tone together, medium tone, light tone together, and so on. Completely mixing everything up. And this in here, I believe I did use sculpting black, and then this eye socket here is sculpting black, not dimension blacks. It wasn't quite as dark as the side of the head, which this is all dimension black up here. And then a lot of the hair was actually dimension black, the darkest areas you see, and then the areas where it looks a little lighter I was using like a dark tone and maybe a little bit of a medium tone also. And the very top I just used some real light tone. I used light tone and then water mixed with it to get a real soft wash. That will lighten up a bit when it heals. For the background, I used a dark tone right against the ear and against this bolt here. I used dark tone, blended it out, and then I blended the medium tone into that. A mixture of dark tone and medium tone together, dipping into both cups. So I went from dark tone to dark tone, medium tone, into just medium tone, into medium light tone, into light tone. so it's just all mixing. And then same with the rest of the background. I shaded it lighter on this side because it's that's the dark side of the tattoo. It didn't need a background at all, but this side did need a background, and I wanted to put some background on this side just to balance the whole tattoo out. And that's pretty much it. A little bit of white. I did a little sliver of white in his lower eyelid on this side. In the picture you could actually see a couple tiny spots, and thought it looked cool to get something in the eye because eyes usually have white highlights, but not in this one. And getting that little bit of white in that lower eyelid kind of gives it that wet look, like it's his lower eyelid's wet from his eye, and it makes the eye pop out a little bit more too. And then the bolts are metal; they have white highlights, and then this metal, whatever you call it, that's like a big staple in his head that helps bring him to life with lightning. Right? Isn't that what that is? That had some white in it too, and that's the only white in the tattoo. It didn't. I usually use a little more white, but it's got to be in the picture usually. So that's pretty much it, man. That's the new and improved Intense gray wash set.